Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking some time to learn a little bit more about study abroad. My name is Jessica Calhoun. I'm an assistant director here at Syracuse University. Really excited to have you join me this afternoon. This is really just kind of an open forum for questions that you have about study abroad, about different program opportunities and things like that. Please feel free to come off mute, to turn on your cameras, ask questions, whatever makes the most sense for you. Happy to answer questions in any way. Does anybody have any questions to start us with?
I guess I'll ask you a quick question.
Great, yeah.
So, just in general, I'm wondering if you could just speak to like whether you would recommend it, if there's a particular type of or individual that you'd recommend it for, and why, um,
Sure.
and how how students can decipher like where, when, what period in their academic college career, just any of the above.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll talk a little bit like personal experience, and I'll go into a little bit of academic experience. So one of my big regrets from my university career was not studying abroad. Very rarely in your life do you have a chance to live in another country for 4 months and really immerse yourself in that culture. We understand that it's not for every student, but for students that really want to have that immersive experience, it is something that I highly recommend. What I will say for study abroad is there's a wide variety of options when it comes to study abroad. And if you're one of those people who's maybe a little hesitant, maybe a semester length program isn't the best bet to start with. There's a lot of different offerings when it comes to short-term programs, summer programs, spring break, winter break, things like that. Great way to kind of dip your toe in, and then it makes you decide whether is this going to be something I want to do for a semester, or does really the short-term model work for me better. When it comes to academics, it is very individualized depending on one, your major, and two, the university that you attend. At Syracuse University, really students in all academic fields have the option to study abroad if that's something that they want to do. In a wide variety of our programs, sometimes students can even study abroad for up to a year. So our School of Architecture students, it's very common for those students to spend a semester in London and then another semester in Florence. That happens a lot because it is quite an immersive experience. The architecture in Florence and London are very different in terms of style, and then also just again those opportunities in that program are different. So it is an individualized experience. Also, language concern is something that we always want to make sure that the students are thinking about. Obviously, if you go to London, you don't really have to worry too much about the language concern. That isn't not. There might be some slang that you get used to, but in terms of language, you don't have to worry about that as much. Other countries, say Madrid, Florence, Santiago, Chile, Tokyo, places like that. Yes, language is going to be of concern for students. By and large, again, programs are equipped to make sure students are comfortable to jump into, whether they're brand new, Italian speakers, or they've been speaking Spanish since fourth grade. There's something kind of for everyone out there. And so it really does, I think I like students to really think about where they would like to go, places that really just kind of spark an interest within them personally, and then see if it lines up with something that you're interested in academically, and see if those things are a fit for you. I know a lot of students, I ask questions like, if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? And I think, most students have at least a handful of places that they have at the top of their list as far as, I've always wanted to see Big Ben, or I've always wanted to see the Eiffel Tower. I've always wanted to see the pyramids, right? These are all kind of things that we've grown up with. Have we had a chance to visit them in person? No. So then taking advantage of those opportunities.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. And again, if you have questions, please feel free to come off mute, ask questions. I can talk really specifically about Syracuse's study abroad programs and then study abroad in general. So anything you want to know.
Hello, my name is
Hi.
Lily. I was wondering, is it common for students to do a study abroad program their freshman or sophomore year and then do a, another trip later in college, or multiple trips?
Yeah, so Syracuse University and a number of universities across the country have something called a first year study abroad program. For us, we call it the Discovery Program. That's for students that really want to hit the ground running. Not only are you starting your very first semester in college, but you're also starting that semester in another country. So the Discovery Program is, again, your very first semester in college. You're either in our Florence Center, our Madrid Center, or our Strasbourg Center in France. So that is a common thing. It's we get about 20 students in each program each year for that very first semester. That usually kind of sparks the travel bug for those that haven't had it yet. And then often they have another study abroad experience, again, whether it's a semester length program or a short-term program or something like that. Depending on your major also kind of depends when the best time to study abroad is. So for our students in the Whitman School of Management, often the second semester of their sophomore year is an ideal time for them to study abroad. Oftentimes we see students, they do not want to study abroad their last semester of their senior year. Makes sense. They want to be on campus for that kind of end of their college experience kind of time. So there are some kind of limitations in that regard, but it is very individualized for the student, as far as time frame of where you want to go, what you want to do. And we not only have academic advisors that help students kind of navigate that process to make sure that, again, they're meeting graduation requirements, getting all the classes that they want to take and need to take, but also there's study abroad advisors to really advise students on the best locations for them and their major, and things that would be really great experiences. So I always like to use the example of my cousin who did a tour of duty in Afghanistan, did not want to spend another 4 months away from his family. And so he went to Israel for 2 weeks as part of a political science program. It was a 1-credit program. And really he got that abroad experience. Not being deployed in the military, just a traditional abroad experience, but in that shorter term, which was made much more sense for him personally. And again, there's a wide variety of ways you can do that.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is it common for a student to go into a country not knowing the language at all and still being able to be successful in the course?
Yeah, so certain countries do have language requirements. So for us, our campus in Santiago, Chile, we at least want to make sure that students have had 2 semesters of Spanish before they go to that country. More often than not, students who go to our Florence campus in Italy have not taken any Italian classes before they go to that campus. And then you will take an Italian class while you're there. But we also, what we do is we pair your host family to your language experience. So if you are a brand new Italian language speaker, your host family is going to speak of fluent English and Italian. If you're going to, say, Spain, and you have been studying Spanish since 4th grade and you're ready to just speak nothing but Spanish for the entire time, your host family will by and large speak almost entirely Spanish. That's really something we individualize the pairing process. So it does depend on the center, and that will be something that you will know as soon as you look at the information for that abroad program. You will know, do I have to have had a year or 2 of Japanese before I go here? Do I have to have this language before I go to that location? By and large, it's not the case, but for some locations, it's just we really encourage it for our students to have that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, and if you have questions, again, feel free to come off mute. You can drop them in the chat as well if that's easier for you, but much more prefer this to be a conversation. Happy to answer any questions anyone has. So I will tell you a little bit about Syracuse's history with study abroad. We have one of the older study abroad programs in the country. Back in 1919, we sent a group of students to China. and have been a top ranked study abroad program since then. We really encourage our undergraduate students to have a study abroad experience. That's kind of a foundational thing with a Syracuse University education, is that global perspective. So we have our own Syracuse University campuses overseas, London, Madrid, Strasbourg in France, Florence, and Santiago, Chile. And then we partner with other institutions, and students really go anywhere they want to go in the world. So really any continent minus Antarctica, there is a study abroad experience that our students can do in those locations. There are everything from semester length programs to short-term programs, summer programs, really just a wide variety to meet the full variety of needs that our students have. And sometimes there's really thoughtful pairings on where our students are going. So we have students that go to Dubai because they're civil engineering majors, and just the engineering marvels that are happening in Dubai, great pairing there. Our physics students go to the CERN Super Collider. Our architecture students, as I mentioned, go to Florence and look at the aqueducts and things like that in Florence. We have our students in our food studies programs that go to Italy and take Italian cooking classes with Italian chefs. And so sometimes it is a personal connection to a location. You may have family or ancestors from a certain location, and you just really want to go back there and study there. Other times it's purely academic. I don't think that there's needs to be one singular reason on why students study abroad in any location. It's really something that you want to think about holistically as far as enriching your academic experience. When it comes to transferring credits and making sure your credits transfer, for us at Syracuse, because they are our campuses overseas, is no different in terms of if you take a class in Florence versus take a class in Syracuse, it's the same course, it counts the same way. You're not going to be behind academically when it comes to that. And then we also work very closely with our world partner programs to make sure that you're not missing out on anything academically when it comes to making sure you're meeting all those graduation requirements. It doesn't do you any good to be behind in any academic requirements. It doesn't do us any good for you to be behind. So we want to make sure before you even leave to go to any location that you're well versed in what classes I'm taking, where am I going? Are there certain cultural norms in a location that are maybe I'm not familiar with in the US? Any questions you have about currency, about safety, about travel, all of those things. We have pre-departure meetings before you even set foot in a country to make sure that you're comfortable there. Again, if you have questions, please jump on in, come off mute and ask those questions. Happy to answer any questions that you have. Lily, I see your cat behind you. It's so cute.
Thank you. Enjoy Zoom meetings.
So in general, what is there? I assume there's an application process. What does that look like? Is it different for Syracuse students versus students from another university? What does that process even look like?
Yeah, so it's individualized for each university as far as their study abroad application process, because not only are you applying to be a part of that program, but you're also applying to, if you're not, say, studying abroad at a Syracuse University Center, you're applying to be a part of another institution's program. So that usually is about a semester prior to where you're going to go. That's something you'll work on with your academic advisor. There are often, again, making sure you're meeting the language requirements, the GPA requirements, that your academic advisor is signing off on those processes, that you're not just going to be, taking like Italian cinema classes and you're a finance major and it's not meeting any of your graduation requirements, things like that. And then it's also making sure that you're meeting all of the visa requirements and travel requirements. Some countries have increased vaccination requirements and things like that. So there's a whole host of things, but that's why we have study abroad advisors, to make sure that our students are going through that entire process, meeting the deadlines, and then getting all the documentation that they need, plane tickets, any kind of currency exchange, all of those things that they'll need.
In terms of that deadline, is it like typically like November for a spring program, and I don't know, maybe I guess the spring for a fall, like, does it?
It's usually earlier because of the we want to make sure the students have passports first, and sometimes that can cause delays. So it's usually I should look up. I could probably I could look up on our website and see exactly the deadline, but I would say for the spring semester it's usually September, October deadline. It's pretty early in that prior semester, simply because we want to make sure that students have time to get their visas done, to get the passports done, to book travel, all of those different things. Make sure if they're living off campus that they can rent their apartment or anything like that. There's a lot of factors involved in that.
And is it program to program in terms of like what's the appropriate age? I mean, I assume freshmen are not going on these
No,
in
she's-
general, or okay, next
So we
slide.
do have first semester study abroad programs where our students do have to have turned 18 by July 1st for an end of August departure. So they do have to be over the age of 18 to be able to depart for that program. But by and large, our students are all over the age of 18 for those programs. Yeah, but other than that, there's not any type of age requirement or anything like that. Yeah, that's one of the hard things with our Discovery, our first semester study abroad programs. If you're a summer birthday like myself, you're kind of right at that cusp of, am I going to be able to go? Usually if you're like within a few days of that deadline, it's not a big deal, but it's harder when you aren't turning 18 until after the start of the semester. It's a little bit harder.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions? Anybody have a location? Hi, Dylan.
Hi.
Hi.
I had a question. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Just about like, I'm sure it differs by school, but just a rough idea of what financial aid would look like for students who want to study abroad but might not be able to afford it.
Yeah, so by and large, your traditional financial aid is able to cover a study abroad experience. So that includes like your federal Pell Grants, federal loans, things like that. The thing you have the hard time with is federal work study, because by and large, there is not federal work study jobs overseas. For our Syracuse University students, our Syracuse University tuition and scholarships and things like that carry over to the program as well. And there is additional financial aid that students are eligible for to make study abroad experience affordable. There's also scholarship opportunities. The Gilman is probably the most nationally recognized scholarship opportunity. So we've had a number of students that are Gilman scholarship recipients, and that really not only is it a tremendous honor to be a Gilman scholar, but it's also a great way to fund your study abroad experience. And then we have some of our programs, like our School of Education has dedicated scholarship funding for School of Education future teachers to go abroad. We have a named scholarship, Hyman Brown Foundation. They dedicated funding to make sure that all the future teachers that we have at Syracuse are able to go abroad if they want to. And so it just kind of, again, depends from school to school, but I would say in terms of financial aid, your traditional financial aid continues to work. If you're using any kind of veterans benefit or GI Bill benefit, that will also carry over to a study abroad experience. But it's something you want to double check with before you even start the process, because sometimes there are certain programs that aren't as affiliated or as national, it's not quite a, you have to be within the Department of Education regulations. Sometimes the semesters at C programs aren't like US programs, and so it's a little bit harder, but again, a little bit different for everybody. Housing assistance is available for, yes, and so for our students, we calculate something we call the cost of attendance, whether they're living here in Syracuse or whether they are living in another country. Sometimes the cost of attendance is much higher. If you go to London, right, cost of living in London is much higher than it is in Syracuse. But our students that are going to Thailand, that cost of living is much lower than it is in Syracuse. And so you can utilize any of your funding, scholarships, grants, anything like that to help cover those housing costs as well. There are a lot of other costs associated with living in another country, right? You have plane tickets, personal expenses, things like that. That's all something that can be covered within that cost of attendance. So it's all something that's calculated in. Every financial aid office at every institution should be entirely 100% familiar with this process. And so when you're sitting down with your study abroad advisor and things like that, you should also be sitting down with financial aid and saying, okay, what does this look like for me financially to go to another country? I've seen some financial aid where it's actually cheaper for the student to spend the semester in Thailand that is in Syracuse, just again, because of the cost of living. We've had some students that have blown their entire financial aid budget in the first 2 weeks living, because they just went out and went shopping and bought a whole bunch of things in Italy very quickly. That also was a little bit of a stressful process. So we have these really robust meetings about budgeting, about spending your money in other countries, about foreign transaction fees for your banks and things like that. All things we talk about before students leave. Other questions?
What are the most common majors to study abroad?
I don't think that there is a specific, I mean, our international relations majors probably study abroad the most, I would say, but that's really, it's pretty typical. I would say our architecture students are studying abroad at a higher rate. At Syracuse, with the scholarship funding for our School of Education students, I would say a higher percentage of School of Education, but across the board, I don't know if I could say one specific major more than others. It's a really good question. I'm trying to think if there's any majors that I can think of at Syracuse that don't study abroad as often. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Yeah, I don't have but I would say international relations, political science majors. Those are the students that really want to, yeah, if you want to major in international relations, you want to go live in another country, especially places like Strasbourg, that are kind of, UN centers and things like that, that you want to go and study abroad in those locations. Is there anything that anybody's thinking about majoring in?
I'm considering history and just being able to travel and see different things and get a feel for history.
Yeah, and I think you could really, go anywhere in the world with history, because each location will teach history of that specific region, and I think that's a really great major if you want to study abroad. Absolutely, and we have some kind of like Eurotech and Asia Tech, so it's more of like intensive. You're going from city to city every day to new cities. Again, a great way to kind of experience a large volume of locations in a shorter amount of time. But I will say that our students that are studying abroad, especially in Europe, very easy to navigate to get into other countries in Europe. By and large, it's like $100 flight to go, from Italy to Germany, or to take the train. I get what I lovingly call train envy when I'm in Europe, because the train systems are so easy to navigate. There's like little kids on the train by themselves. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm all right here by myself too. But also very easy just to get, our students go from, they're in Florence during the week studying, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they have the time off. Okay, great. I'm going to France this week. I'm going to the Alps this week. I'm going here this week. And so very easy, especially in Europe, to navigate between countries. Obviously not always the case in every country. There are some restrictions that students face in China, going into Taiwan. And we did have a campus in Hong Kong that did shut down, especially when all of the political unrest was going on in Hong Kong. Same thing, we had a campus in Istanbul in Turkey. Again, political climate in Turkey, we determined it was not safe for students to be in Turkey at that time. And so unless that situation changes, we do have an Office of Global Security and Information, just to make sure that not only are our students staying safe, but we have faculty staff there. We have faculty that are researching there, students that are traveling to do research, and all of that. And so they're making sure that everything's geopolitically safe for our students, whatever location that they're going to.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah. Other questions? Anything you want to know more about? Any place anybody really wants to go to? Nothing. I'm like leaving for the UK tomorrow, so I'm going through the whole like 4 COVID tests scheduling and making sure I have all of that going on. So it is a process, but it is a doable process. So don't stress in that regard if you're worried about like the process-based things. It seems like a lot, but it's not too bad.
Yeah, how does that look now with COVID?
Yeah, so if you're vaccinated, you can go. You have to do a test 3 days before you depart. You have to do a passenger locator form. You have to do a test once you get there. If you're not vaccinated, you have to quarantine for 10 days before you can do anything, and then keep taking tests. But by and large, it's a fairly easy process in terms of that. I mean, I'd rather be able to go and go through a little bit of a little bit of struggle in the front end and the back end than not be able to go. And our students are all studying abroad this semester. And so again, they understand that they have to do, they have different masking requirements and different vaccination requirements in other countries. But as long as you're meeting those requirements, they're able to live and have fun in those countries.
Nice.
Yeah,
I had another question,
sure.
but I didn't write it down and
It's
I forgot it.
okay.
Let's see. What kinds of things are you limited with learning when you study abroad? Like, are there certain places that are better to go for like your certain majors? And then are there certain places that you like really shouldn't go if that's like not at all your major?
That's a good question. I think by and large, especially with the various social sciences, humanities courses that all students will have to take in some way, shape, or form, that there are opportunities in every country. I think certain locations have a benefit, right? If you're thinking, if you're thinking art history, there's some really phenomenal, Florence is a really great place to be. Paris is a really great place to be. If you're thinking international relations and politics, Strasbourg is a really great place to be. If you're thinking about business or drama, London's a really great place to be. If you're thinking about engineering and our pre-health students, a lot of them go to Madrid. So it just really depends. And that's something that your academic advisor and your study abroad advisor will really help you with, and just be like, you're not going to meet any of your requirements if you go here. So that and the offerings do change by semester depending on the faculty that are there. But again, you'll be able to take, classes that fulfill other requirements. You might want to save up, some of your humanities classes, and then utilize those in those locations. And again, it does depend from university to university. Some universities have, national centers for, so our, disability and education is really prominent in Florence in Italy. If you're talking about, K through 12 education and disability services, and it's not something you'd immediately equate with Florence, but you're like, oh, okay, I didn't even think about that. So,
Yeah.
that's where your advisors really come in handy. And we have something we call a program selector tool that helps you, again, if you're thinking, okay, I want Europe. Okay, no, I really don't want to go to Europe. I want to go to Asia. No, I really want to go to New Zealand. I really just love Lord of the Rings and I want to go do the walk. But I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why students study abroad, right? Whether it's family, whether it's personal, whether it's cultural, whatever it is. It's not always a one-to-one relationship between, okay, I'm an engineering student, I have to go to this location. Sometimes there's other reasons why students go.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody have any other questions? Anything they want to know more about? Or locations that they're interested in going to? I should pull up some information for you right here. Just give me one moment. I'm going to share this with you so everybody can see this. Let me just skip ahead a little bit. So, so this is just some of the information about some of our various centers. So you can see, Florence Center, really big for architecture, design, engineering, studio arts, obviously, and food studies. Some pictures. The one on the far right is the Villa Rosa. That's the campus in Florence, very close to downtown Florence, and some of the, like the Ponte Vecchio and the Duomo, and beautiful places throughout Florence. The London Center, our students live in apartments in London, not in homestays, simply because London's a little bit harder, just as far as location wise is where students can live, much easier to live in an apartment. And then our Santiago Center, just gonna flip through them, Madrid Center, our Strasbourg Center. And then this is just a few, I did some screenshots of all of this is the most recent list of where we have various programs. So you can see not all of them are our programs, there are our world partner programs, but you can see the various locations in Africa, in Asia. Europe is probably the biggest as far as where our students go, just as far as like numerically in terms of programs. So you can see just the, the wide variety of programs in Europe. And then, in the Middle East, I think I mentioned a little bit earlier that my cousin did a 2-week-long intensive in Israel as a political science student. Again, really a really great place there. South America and our Santiago Center, Oceania. So again, a lot of really great opportunities for study abroad. That is my contact information. Don't utilize that sorry, let me go back. Don't utilize that QR code, that goes to somewhere else. But that is my contact information if you have any questions. And then if there's anything you want to know, whether it's a Syracuse specific program or if you just want to kind of get some more information about study abroad, happy to answer questions that you have in that regard. Or if you want to see any of these programs down here. And what I'll do is I'll drop my email address in the chat as well, so everybody can see that. So that is my email address. I do read for our discovery program, our very first semester study abroad program. I will say some of the more popular places that our students have been going lately. Ireland seems to be very, very popular. South Africa, very popular. Australia, very popular. But really, again, anywhere you want to go in the world, there's a program. I do wish we had something in Antarctica. I would love to get students on a research vessel in Antarctica. That would be phenomenal. I would love to be a part of that. That is my on the top of my list as far as study abroad locations. But again, anywhere you want to go. Any other questions that anyone has? I will say the easiest city I think to navigate for me was in Germany. Let's see, is there a person that students can contact if they need assistance? Is that a common thing across most colleges? Is a person? Yes. So there are staff members that are there in each of the study abroad centers to help. Not only that, is that there are points of contact back at your home college if you're having concerns, whether it's concerns with fellow students, concerns with safety, family concerns, homesickness, anything like that. Our centers have dealt with all of those different things. And then also if you have any dietary restrictions, right? Dietary restrictions look very different from country to country and how they handle those things. I can't imagine going to places like Japan and maybe not speaking the language that well and then having to worry about, what might have like nut oil in it or something like that. They are well versed in making sure that our students are able to navigate those places. So yes, each center and across the university as a whole, there is basically like 24/7 support for the students, no matter where they are. Yeah, absolutely, Mia. Other questions? I'll keep flipping through some of these different places. Favorite city to visit for me is Florence. Florence is beautiful. It did feel very magical. I didn't get to live there in Florence. Again, I'm a huge advocate of study abroad because I did not study abroad. I really wish I could go back and change that and spend a semester in another country. Very rarely in your life do you have a chance to live in another country, you know, for 4 months. And so again, I'm a big advocate for those programs, but Florence is probably one of the more magical cities, I will say, that I've ever visited. I did visit Tokyo, also very much like Germany, little kids all by themselves riding all of the trains and things like that. It makes you feel much more secure in those locations. Seeing like little elementary school kids by themselves on the train, you're like, okay, yep, well, I'm good. I'm good. If you have safety concerns, I know a lot of students have concerns about safety. And again, that's why we as Syracuse University have an Office of Global Safety and Security to make sure, again, our students are staying safe wherever they are, especially if they have concerns about pickpockets or anything like that. We always want to make sure that our students are staying safe. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing this and come back. Any other questions? Anything else you want to know more about? Yeah, if you've been abroad before and you've studied or you've traveled abroad with your family and are kind of comfortable in that experience, first semester study abroad programs are a great way to get that kind of jump in both feet into your college experience. Do most students take classes only pertaining to their major while they're studying abroad? No, they take classes in a wide variety of things. Like I mentioned, in our Florence Center, our students can take Italian cooking with Italian chefs. They can take sculpture classes, even if they're not art majors. They can take thing about the aqueducts of Rome, even if they're not, say engineering or architecture majors. So there is a chance for you to take classes in other areas. And then also the language class might not be, you might not be a foreign language major, but still be having the opportunity to take a language class. Absolutely. And what I notice most with study abroad is students are taking classes Monday through Thursday. So you have 3 days on their weekends to kind of go and travel and visit various locations. Whether it's, whether you're traveling within the country, whether you're going to other places outside of those countries. By and large, especially say like in the European Union, very easy to get, from one country to another. Hello, welcome. So, driving from, Austria or from Germany to Austria, you just need to stop at basically like a little toll booth and get a sticker that lets you drive in that country. There's usually very cheap plane tickets that you can get from one country to the other. And then again, the train system, very easy to get to various countries while you're traveling there. Anytime there's any kind of restrictions on where you should and should not travel, those are things that you're going to be very well aware of when you're going there. Same thing with cultural restrictions, right? There might be certain gestures that are very common in the United States that are not, that are obscene in other countries. There might be styles of dress that are inappropriate in other countries. Those are all things that we talk about with our students as far as before they leave. So they're well versed in kind of what the norms are in different cultures, because it does differ from place to place. Where do you tip? Where don't you tip? What's the conversion rate? All of those different things. Any other questions? Anybody have a place that they're really itching to go? For me, it's Vietnam and Iceland. Those are the two places that I'm just, if I had a list, those are probably the top two places that I'd want to go to. And again, if you just joined us, you can go ahead and just unmute and ask questions if you have questions. Happy to answer any of those questions. What about you, Dylan? Where would you go? Just anywhere. It doesn't even have to study abroad. Just go. Where would you go?
Just anywhere.
Yeah.
I'd really love to go to Scotland and
Yeah.
Ireland, New Zealand.
Yeah.
Just oh
Have you been any of those places?
no, I've actually
No.
never left the country, which is
Okay.
why I really want to do study abroad, because I think it might be like a really good like first like opportunity.
Yeah, because you're kind of in a controlled environment a little bit. You're,
Oh, for
you
sure.
know, you're with other people, you're with, your classmates. And so it's not like, oh, I'm going on this weekend trip
Yeah.
to France. No, I'm going on a weekend trip with like 10 other people that are also have never been to France before, or yeah, absolutely. So and I hear that all the time, and I get so jealous every time I hear about, oh, we did a weekend trip here, and yeah, it sounds like
Yeah.
unlike anything else. So, but yeah, I would, yeah, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, New Zealand's also on the top of my list there.
Mhm. It's just, oh,
Yeah.
it's so pretty.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to go there.
Yeah. I love any kind of travel show. I don't know if you guys watch any like travel, like I love Anthony Bourdain, and then the Zac Efron did that show where he traveled around the world. It's on Netflix. Anytime anybody travels anywhere, I'm like, okay, where are they going? What are they doing? What are they eating? That's my big thing. What are you eating over there?
What are you eating? That's a big
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
If I go somewhere like kind of scary, I don't know, I might just have to be vegetarian. Just 'cause
Yeah, but that's part of the fun. It's
scare me
just,
a little bit.
yeah. I did have a moment of regret in one of those kaiten where like the not elevator, what am I talking, like the revolving sushi things
Oh yeah.
in Tokyo. I thought it was like a tempura fried thing. No, it was cod eggs around it, and I did not know until I took basically the whole thing in my mouth. It was not a fun experience.
Yeah.
But you know what? You live and you learn. And now I am a little bit more careful about which ones I'm like, "Ooh, yep, I want this. I want this."
For sure.
More careful about that.
Yeah.
So
Have you
yeah.
like been to dim sum? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. I went the other day with my grandma, and because she's Chinese,
Mhm.
and I remember like the first time I ever went to dim sum, she gave me like chicken feet and told me that they were just Asian calamari. So I was like, oh, okay. So I bit into it, and then I ended up spitting out all the bones, and I was like, what is this?
It's all bone.
Yeah. I was like, no.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So I lived near San Francisco for a long time. So there is some really good dim sum in San Francisco.
Good. That's awesome. I love dim sum.
Yeah.
So
So
I mean, it's just us. Can I just keep
Yeah.
talking?
yeah, absolutely. Do you have any other questions?
I did. I had one question. I'm trying to, I think, pursue law.
Okay. Yeah.
And I also really want to study abroad. And
Yeah.
those two things, I've never been able to like put a connection between them.
Well, I mean,
There-
even just London alone, I mean, if you want to look at what was kind of foundational in our legal system, the going to London and seeing how, there's similarities, but you can also see where we're like, okay, how do they do it? Okay, we're doing it this way. So, and then you can also go, every country has their own international law, domestic law, right? It happens in every single city across the world. So, I mean, I feel like you could almost go anywhere with that. Let me actually, you know what I'm going to do is while we're chatting right here, I'm going to pull up our program selector tool. I have it up, and see if they have a recommendation for law students, because I'm kind of curious to see if there's other locations that they might recommend. Okay, so this one is Geneva, Switzerland, international tax law. That makes sense. I get it. Because a lot of people, yeah. Poland has a law. London also has a summer law. Yeah, so those are the three. If I just put in law in our program selector tool, I'll drop it in this chat box so you can kind of see what it looks like. But you can basically put in any kind of interest or location interest, and you can see what makes the most sense for you.
Alrighty, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, this is so cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's also the link for all of the various Syracuse abroad programs. So you can kind of take a look at each one and look at some of those different programs.
That's cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. It was really nice meeting you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good luck with your college search and everything.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.